namaste everyone. Welcome to the Charvak podcast. This is your host Kushal Mehra. All right, so last couple of days ago we had discussion on the British elections. Today we're going to be talking about another set of elections that were recently concluded. These elections were in France, and um, uh, today we are going to have a very different kind of a discussion because I'm going with the working assumption that a lot of you may not know how elections actually are conducted in France. So, to explain everything about the election process of France, we have Catherine Perez-Sheptem. Catherine, how are you doing?
I'm really great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So, I was trying to understand the process in France, Catherine, but even I found it a little tricky. I was like, okay, there is round one, then there is round two. So let's start with the very basic today. I would
Mm,
request you to actually assume that the people who are listening to this do not know anything about French politics or French elections. So, can we start there, if you don't mind?
sure. So the election that we had in France were actually legislative elections. So normally they take place about every 5 years, but it is within the power of the president to decide basically whenever they take place and should they take place early. And that was the case. That happened. So on the back of the European elections, it became very clear in France that there was a clear tilt towards the right. I don't like to say the far right because I think the politics in France has been slightly rewritten in that the far right doesn't actually feel like the far right. They kind of really mainly feel like mainstream. And I think that one of the main reasons for that is that the only, not the only party, but the party of Marine Le Pen, Rassemblement National, reinvented itself away from the very extreme that her father was actually pushing and promoting to kind of to rejoin, I would say, a more um, pragmatic approach to politics in France. And so I think that today, as of today, she represents the kind of center right of 20, 30 years ago, which is actually quite interesting because there's been a that actually tells you that rather than having extremes in France, you have a push towards the extreme left that has become more extreme in its position, and the right has kind of moved towards the center. So it's a very strange move. And this is not to say that we don't have, the far right in France, but it's I would say in terms of political representation, um, now I would say that most of France is center right, and Macron, our president, who claims to be center right, is actually pushing towards the left. It's a very interesting and weird situation. And so in the face of the win from the Rassemblement National, President Macron decided to call for legislative, and because he felt, also he said at the time, that the prime minister that he had appointed was not representative of popular will, and so he wanted to fix that. And so off we went. We had legislative, and in France, it's a very simple kind of direct way of exercising democracy. In that one person, one vote. France is broken up when it comes to electing members of parliament at the Assemblée Nationale into circumscriptions. Everyone has a list. Several parties are, of course, represented on that list, and then people go to vote depending on where they live for that particular list. So, the winner of those elections, if they have absolute majority, there's only one round. If there's kind of a semi majority, then there's round two, which explains the why of one or two. It could be one. It's rare, but usually it's two, and we had two. And we have 577 seats at the Assemblée Nationale. And that means that in order to win the majority, you have to have half of 577 plus one. And unfortunately, today, because of what took place in the first round of the elections, where the Rassemblement National, so what they call today the far right, which is more center right, really, won about 37% of the votes, which was not enough to get them through completely. And we had to have a round two. And at which point, President Macron thought it was a great idea to, bearing in mind that he speaks for the right, allegedly, to call on the left to create this kind of mass coalition, what they call the New Front Populaire, to block the rise of the Rassemblement National. So some people have argued that it was a move that was profoundly anti-democratic, that there was a desire to muddy the waters, which eventually happened. And the result of that is a very broken General Assembly. We have a broken parliament. There is no clear majority other than that formed by the new Front Populaire, that is the left. But the problem is if you break that down, which is a big umbrella for various leftist factions, there is no clear winner within that with a clear majority. So it's basically a kind of whatever. Marine Le Pen could not establish her authority, although she is the big winner of that election, because she's the only one who did not have to basically link up to anyone or make a deal, broker a deal with anybody. She stands on her own 2 feet, and she got quite a few seats, 220 if I'm not mistaken, which is not the majority, but it's a great big chunk. And the others are leading by 20 to 40 seats, which is nothing, bearing in mind that they had to literally gang up on her and find people, under the floorboards to join that coalition. And now our lovely French president has decided to not nominate a prime minister just yet, because obviously from the majority that should have risen from those elections, a prime minister should have been chosen from among the majority party that would have been elected. But because there is no clear winner to those elections, and I have a feeling that it was architected that way, we find ourselves in a situation where our president is not willing to force or to incline to decide who's going to be the prime minister next, and that means that France is unmanageable. Isn't that fun?
So this is very interesting. So it's something like a proportionate representation, but not exactly proportionate representation. Like, what the hell is this?
It's the French democracy. It's what we call in France direct democracy, in the sense that one person, one vote. You are electing per your area circumscription, among a list of candidates, and whoever has the more votes will hold a seat at the General Assembly and represent his conscription, his or hers, and speak on behalf of the people that it's meant to represent. And that more broadly, because that person is part of a political faction, that faction will have more or less, I would say, influence into the policies of France. So France is a very direct type of democracy. It's not like in the UK where the system is a bit, I would say, flawed, where a party could be very popular but not have actually any seat at parliament, because it would require for the people who are voting for that particular party to be, to be concentrated in a particular area where they could win. I think it's even more diluted. In France, it's a lot more direct. So you could get a real sense of what France is thinking, what France wants to do, and which way it's leaning. And I think that really clearly today. And I know that a lot of people will disagree with me and say that I'm reading between the lines, but I'm not. Numbers tell you that France is right, and not Macron right. France is right in the way that upsets the left, upsets the center right, because they have very clear views on what should happen in terms of immigration. And I'm not talking about stopping people from coming in, because you and I know very well, and this is the feeling in France too, that immigration is an absolute positive for a country. They're talking about making sure that the people who do come in are willing to play by the rules of the French Republic, that they are not listed somewhere as radical Islamist or radical full stop or terrorist. And that those people who do come in have also an understanding that they need to abide by the rule of law while being in France. And it's quite simple. I mean, there's also an understanding that the system is broken, that housing is in a state of crisis, that the health is in a state of crisis, that France is in a state of crisis, and that before we begin dispersing money right, left, and center to other most likely well-meaning people, charity needs to start at home, and that the French people should have priority, which I don't think is actually a bad notion. I think it's important for a president and a country to look after its own first, and then once it feels that it can, and should it not harm the people, then by all means extend generosity outside. That's a responsibility that we should all bear. But again, if it means that you have to cut off your leg while doing so, I don't think it's very productive. And this is the kind of feeling that the French, wanted to iterate at the elections. But they were accused of being racist, of being fascist, of being this and that. Has nothing to do with anything. I mean, I'm not going to say that France is not racist, because I would be lying. That is not true. France is racist to an extent. But France also understand that immigration had a lot to do with the strength that France managed to gain since World War II. And if not for immigration and people coming from North Africa and the Middle East and Asia, France would not be the superpower that it is today. This is not an opinion, it's a fact. Immigration is always a plus. Without it, a country would die and wither, and I think it would be very boring. And so it's good when it's managed properly. And I think that the issue is that we're conflating a lot of the time the issue of immigration with the country's inability to provide the infrastructures required to accompany, support immigration. And so the issue is, what is the government doing in terms of, the health sector, academia, the economy, the workplace, and all those different things to support and permit for immigration to happen in a positive way? And the answer is unfortunately nothing. And so we found ourselves in a situation where this influx of people coming into France is becoming very difficult to manage, because where are they going to live? How will the health sector support, new people to take care of? It cannot, because we don't have enough doctors or nurses and whatnot. So the issue, again, not immigration, but the fact that the government has failed in providing the services that it actually sworn to provide to France, the French people, and the people living in France. So that's the problem that we found ourselves in. But nobody wants to frame it that way, because obviously it doesn't get you a vote.
So what sounds very confusing to me is, if I look at different aspects of media coverage when it comes to Marine Le Pen, I want to focus on her first. I often hear the word far right being used for her all the time. Now, I'll be the first one to disclose, I don't know her views. I have not followed French politics. So what is the definition of far right in France? Because everybody uses the word far right these days, and
Yeah.
I don't know what makes one far right anymore. They call me far right. I'm liberal socially on almost everything.
Well, you should move to France. You should run in the elections. You might be elected. Look, about 30 years ago. So Marine Le Pen come from, she's a political legacy in that her father, I think in the 1950s, or 60s, set up the political party called Front National, which means the National Front. That was labeled far right. It was a very far right party, in the sense that they were flat out against immigration. And for the simple reason that he didn't want any foreigners to come to France. So that, I mean, the thinking was completely flawed. It was a little bit ridiculous, given the fact that his party literally, was birthed at in the middle of the Trente Glorieuses, which was the 3 decades that France saw an explosion in immigration and economic growth. Surprise, because it needed to be rebuilt following World War II. That on the back of the Algeria's independence from France and the end of the colonial era, a lot of immigrants came back. Some were Algerian, some were French who had been born in Algeria and decided to return. There was a mix of people. And so his party really positioned itself against this wave of migration. And it wasn't not just against, I would say, people from North Africa. It was literally against anyone who wasn't blonde, blue-eyed, white French person. So that kind of discounted a lot of the people, including people from, overseas, that are born French with a French passport, and they're not immigrants, but he didn't like them either. So that was a clear-cut case of far-right kind of ideology, the kind that we've seen for decades and decades. And then things started to change in France, and I think that Marine Le Pen took over her father's party. I'm not saying that she's an angel; she's not. For a very long time, could not bear listen to her. And I think a lot had to do, and I have to admit, to bias, because through her I was seeing her father. And then I started to listen for about a couple of years now to what she was saying, and only because she showed up on my TikTok. So blame the algorithm. And then, there was a few things that she was saying that I found myself agreeing with, and I was thinking, hang on a second, I can't be agreeing with the far right. Um, and I listened to her, and again, when she and she might well be lying. I'm not saying that. I'm not going to be naive and believe everything that she says, but if I was to judge her on the narrative that she holds right now, she's talking about immigrations in the terms that I just described, which in my mind is, I would say, a very pragmatic, objective kind of, normal way to look at it if you have two brain cells, in that immigration, again, per se, has been labeled as a bad word. I don't see why. It's a positive. I'm an immigrant myself, in the UK. I'm French living in the UK, so technically an immigrant. I don't think that anyone would see me that way, though, which is interesting, because again, I fit the demographic, but then I'm not. I'm an immigrant, and by virtue of that, I don't see the difference between me and someone coming out of Africa. I mean, my trip was faster, but I mean, the same principle. I came in from a foreign country. I wasn't born here. I didn't speak the language. I've learned it like everyone else. I mean, maybe earlier than some, but I did. And so there you go. I'm on equal par with someone from China, Africa, wherever. Um, Again, it's for me, it's always been about, how is it being handled? Are we protecting both parties in terms of the services that we are providing? And that's the kind of thing that she's talking about. Now she's talking about the importance to hold to France secular values. And again, people may agree or disagree, but if one takes the view that if you decide to come to France, which is a republic, a secular republic that abides by certain rules, and then you would like to assume that you are willing to play by those rules, and if you don't, then choose maybe another country to go to. And I don't think that's being unfair or radical to say, if you're not happy in France, there's always Canada, there's America. I mean, there's many countries around the world that people could go to and have a wonderful life. So again, her argument was not completely out of this world, and she was talking about the need to crack down on Islamic radicalism in all its form, and to make sure that those people who did committed crimes and came into the country without due process and had been flagged by the police and judged should be returned, as opposed to be let free, as if it's some kind of reservation, and to wander the streets of Paris or wherever and commit more crimes, or potentially create a security situation, because then we don't know who they are, where they are, and what they do it. Because if you're not registered anywhere, if you're not working, if you're not, then who are you, and and if you have committed a crime on top of it, why are you here? If you don't have any papers and you came here illegally, you broke the law to begin with, and so you should be returned. So again, those arguments are not completely crazy. I think very pragmatic. Obviously, it needs to be a case by case situation, where depending on the situation, the context of why people came here illegally, it needs to be looked at, of course. But she's not saying that she's going to send people willy-nilly. She wants to make sure that the law is being applied here. Again, not nuts. She wants the French to have rights over that of foreign nationals in terms of access to social services that they contributed to through their taxes. So again, I don't think it's nuts, and I don't think it would be completely crazy to ask for foreign nationals, when they come into the country, before they have the chance to contribute, to all those wonderful things that the French enjoy, like free education, free health service, and all those things, to maybe pay a premium. Those are the things that happen in the UK, for example, or in Canada, or even in Australia. And so people have accused her of being, a racist demagogue and a populist for peddling those views. And I don't see why, because again, those things are being applied in other countries quite well. It functions, so why not? We haven't tried it, so again, why not? I don't think it's racist to say that France has laws and they need to be protected and applied, and that when crimes are being committed, regardless of who commit them, the person committing those crimes should pay the price. And if they happen to be whichever color or to pertain to whichever faith, matters not. because before the law all are equal. So those are the things that she says. Now, whether or not she means it and she's going to apply it, I don't know. But that's what she says. And so a lot of people feel that they wanted to give her a shot because they tried everything. They tried the left, they tried the right, or center right rather, with Macron. He promised, he lied. He promised again, lied again, and lied some more. And they fed up. They fed up because there's a surge in anti-French sentiment. And I think since October 7th and the intervention in Gaza, things have gone from bad to worse in that people feel so brazen in their, not just their anti-Semitism, but the desire to express their hatred towards France. And I'm like, well, if you don't like it, doors open. People are free to criticize, but to criticize by burning a flag and to say that they want to rape French women and they want to do and whatever, to just have this kind of very open hatred of a country that you were born in. Yes, you're an immigrant from second generation, but you're French technically. And so what is wrong with, pledging allegiance to the flag? And it doesn't mean that you have to give up your life, but I'm just saying, there's just like, you were born here, France gave you, maybe not everything, but give you a shot. And, if you don't like it, change it, but it's up to you. But to just dismiss a country's history and a nation's culture and tradition just because you come from somewhere else and you decide that your values are better, then my suggestion would be to return to that place that you long for so much, rather than make French lives unbearable. And so the French voted, I don't think for racism or for fascism. They voted for a return to France needs to actually be French, in that we need to be proud of who we are, what we are, where we come from, and to build with other people together a new France, a France that would be inclusive and that would be more respectful of the people. But if those other people are intent on bashing us on the head for being French, it's going to be a really hard conversation to be had. So yeah, that's where we are.
So from what I understand is this is the standard line that is used in almost every place in the world nowadays with the rise of the anti-immigration sentiment. It's very much rampant in Canada too, with Justin Trudeau just letting in hordes of immigrants in, a lot of them from India, by the way.
Mm,
And listen, at the end of the day, a system is not able to handle pressure beyond a point. It's not racist to say that if you let a million people in and then you don't have housing to keep more than 200,000 to 300,000 of them, the rates are going to go up, rent
mm,
is going to go up, and the average Canadian is going to suffer. And that's exactly what happened in Canada. I
mm.
don't know what the situation is in France because I have
Same.
not followed France.
It's exactly the same. And look, it's and I think more to your point, it actually demonstrates that there's you have the economics of immigration, and you can't again, to dismiss them, for me, that's just being psychotic, because facts are facts, numbers are numbers, and there's math here that needs to compute somewhere. And again, resources are finite. A country resources are finite, and you can't just say, oh well, let's wish upon a star is going to make it better. No. Again, immigration by all means, but let's organize it so that the rules that are being followed allow for people to integrate society in an orderly manner without them suffering, with them being able to really embrace and benefit from everything that the country has to offer, to allow the children to go to a good school and to have the education that those kids deserve, and all those beautiful things that people want when they immigrate. Because imagine you outrooting your family and your life, and you're going to have to learn a new language. Do you want to go to a shithole country? No. You want to go to a country where you're going to build a new life and where your children will be safe and have a good education, all those things that everyone wants for their family. So now, if we don't make sure that this is provided for both the new arrivals and the people who were already in the country, then we have a problem, because you're going to create instability. You're going to create a sense of disenfranchisement among immigration, among immigrants communities, but also I think anger and resentment, because people will have this feeling that, oh, it's your fault, you the other that just showed up, when the guy essentially just showed up to work and to improve and to bring his expertise and his intelligence to the party. But of course, because it has been mismanaged by the government. The government is never to blame, right? And it's always like the two communities being left to kind of battle it out. And I think it's a ridiculous notion. And I think I'm not trying to take the blame away from people, uh, holding to those views, because I think you need to be held accountable and educate yourself. I mean, if you're going to spew some ridiculous things, just like, it's your fault, you being silly. But the government has done everything it can to hide this information, to push blame away. And whenever someone has, like I'm doing right now, the argument that maybe we should do better, they say, oh, so you're racist, you don't like immigrants. I am an immigrant, I have zero issues with immigration. I'm all for it, because otherwise I'll be standing against myself. So if anything, by out of a sense of self-preservation, of course I'm going to be advocating for, but also sincerely. um I mean, what are we if there's not this kind of friction between people and an exchange of ideas? And again, it's would be so boring if we were just sitting amongst ourselves and nothing would move. Society would be static, and a society that doesn't move dies and withers. And I think an injection of new blood and beautiful new traditions and colors is wonderful, and it has worked for a very long time. It's just now I think we've reached the point of, like, we can't, because the state has made it so that there's a block, and they're trying to have this grand discussion about, oh, it's about immigration. No, no, it's about infrastructures. but but it's so easy to engineer chaos and to then argue for new laws and restrictions on freedom, when there is chaos, because no one is really looking, and people are not interested in having the normal conversation that we're having right now about building infrastructures, because it's boring. It's so much easier to say that someone is racist, or that someone is this, or that someone is that, because then you attack them personally. It makes more like a clickbait type of thing. And unfortunately, ignorant people like to have easy conversation and like to get angry at things, because it gives them a belief that they're actually useful for something, and that they're not completely useless, but they are, because they're redirecting the conversation in a direction that will not benefit anyone, even less so immigrant population. And I want them to come. We need immigration, we absolutely need it. First of all, French, like the Brits, don't have babies. So if you want to sustain, no, it's true, on average is about 2 points and a quarter. So the quarter is not going to help you. So I mean, the best you could hope right now is sustain. But if you want a society to grow, the economy to grow, you want innovation, you want business to thrive, you want all those different things. A population needs to grow. Society needs to kind of like reinvent itself every few decades. So if French people don't have babies, who's going to have them? We need people to come in, right? And so immigration is a necessity. It's a matter of national security and national survival. But again, structure.
It's not that immigration is a problem. I don't know why it becomes so hard when people have these conversations and they cringe. I don't know why the left cringes, but it's who comes in. For
Yep.
example, I have always said that immigration policy should be based on mutual respect. That if I move to Canada or America or France or England, I know I'm going to a certain society that is built on specific value systems. In the case of France, it's liberty, equality, fraternity, the unique concept that the French follow.
The
In
Holy
the
Trinity, we call it.
yeah, yeah. So in the case of the United States of America, it's all decentralized societies, freedom obsessed, gun rights, very Christian. You know what you're going there
Mhm.
for, okay? You know what society it is. In the case of England, England officially calls itself a Christian nation. Why? It's fine. You go there. You have to respect those societies. Those societies, by and large, run in very secular ways. They don't force their religion on you, and that's you should respect those systems. If you don't like them, I always say this. You should, just like I say in India. In India's case, our system is largely democratic, but we are a majority Hindu society, and people like Hindu values in India. and if you have a problem with that, you should not come here. And I always say this, like, there was a bill called the Citizenship Amendment Act, which created a special pass for non-Muslims in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, because we have a history in that land, right? We got separated. That was basically India. All these places was India historically. So the non-Muslims in that area, the current government, created a bill that would give some of them a right to passage and a faster entry into India. And the Indian left opposed it. They said, why not all of them? Well, because the Muslims in Pakistan literally fought for a Pakistan. So we gave it to them. How can we let them in again? It's I mean, you
Well,
don't get to cash
well,
the same check twice.
well, we could have the same argument with some people in France, arguing for the mass arrival of others. But yeah, look, I
And
honestly
there's
think,
nothing
because I
wrong in
refuse.
wanting people.
Look, I don't think, and I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I've been sounding like one for a few months. But seriously, because I refuse to think that people, at least, look, I'm going to assume that if you manage to walk yourself up the ladder, and you're an MP or you're a minister or something, I would say that you have a degree of understanding of what is going on. At least a degree. I'm not going to say you're smart. I'm not going to go as far, but I'm going to say you have a degree of understanding. And so to assume or to believe that those people don't know exactly what they're doing, for me, would be stupid on our part. And that's why I'm telling you. I think that there are such thing as the economics of immigration. I'm not the one that came up with the term, and I studied finance, so I mean, those are the things that kind of like pop up at uni, and you learn about them. It's that simple. It's a numbers game. So if they know and they do nothing, and you can't blame it on the NHS or in France on something else, because we have the equivalent, then what it is, it's architected. And why is it architected? Again, I'm going back to the idea that when chaos ensues, and that people are always very quick to find, who's the culprit, who can I blame outside of myself, because obviously, I cannot be held accountable for the crap that I'm in right now. It's so much easier, because people would then, start bashing each other on the head and be blaming, like, the brown one, the black one, the whatever, the white one, because it's easy. Let's reduce people to colors, because that's just, life works that way. And the real culprits, the government, are free to do whatever they want under the guise of, again, fixing the problem. And that means, eroding at our civil liberties and taking away our freedoms. And people will be too busy arguing over the color of the neighbor's shoes, that they won't pay attention to what is actually going on, and a real solution will never be found. And then you wake up one day and you under a flag you can't recognize, and under an ideology that you don't know could come back, unfortunately. And here we are.
Yeah, it's I have failed to understand this simple argument that all cultures and all values are not equal. People who like certain values, for example, people who believe Hamas has a better value structure, should go and stay in Palestine. They
I
should
no,
actually go and stay in Palestine.
I would recommend calling the Pope and asking for an exorcist. Frankly, that is my view. But if people believe that Hamas has any value whatsoever other than murdering, anyone who doesn't absolutely, when I mean absolutely agrees with them, and I mean each other, by the way, then they need to have their head examined, because there is no value system to be had under Hamas, and Hamas is a terrible, terrible organization. It's a terrorist organization. For a reason, they commit acts of terror and atrocities against humanity. And I'm not saying this because I'm Jewish. They're not just doing it against the Jews. They're doing it against Palestinians. And whoever claims, and I'm going to say this very slowly so that people get it, whoever claims to be standing for or speaking for Palestinians need to understand that if they truly want for them freedom, and they should want for them freedom, they should want a state for them, they should want all the things that we take for granted today. It doesn't go through Hamas. Hamas would be the end of the Palestinian cause. It would be the end of Palestinians. It would be the end of the idea that is still Palestine. And that's, if that's what they want, it's fine. If they also want to be remembered in history as those guys that allowed for women and children, and I'm talking about Palestinian women and children, to be used as meat for the cannons by Hamas because it was so convenient, just because anti-Semitism comes naturally to them. Get your head examined, because you are sitting on the wrong side of history, and history will remember you. And unfortunately for you today, everything lives forever on the internet, so it won't be fun. And I say this: life is sacred, and not just mine, but that of everybody, even those people I don't like, because it's not up to me to call for the death of people on the basis that they don't look like you, they don't sound like you, and you don't like them, is despicable. Now, to call for to call for a country to defend itself against terror is a legitimate stand, the only stand, because when you want to extend compassion to murderers and terrorists, that is an injustice, a terrible injustice against the victims of those people. So be careful where you stand and where you tread. And of course, I'm not, trying to pinpoint at anyone, but whoever recognized itself in my speech, well, you're welcome.
So I have another question, because that this is something that had popped up in my timeline too, where people are alleging that, oh, they actually robbed Marine Le Pen of this opportunity to win. Do you think that was a fair assessment? Like, political strategies happen all the time, right? I mean,
No,
that's just an
no.
unfair thing to see.
Look, it's like I said, it's not a manipulation. In France, you can't manipulate the vote, in the sense that one person won vote and then the list did not change. So there was no change other than this massive push on social media and in the media for the left and every well-meaning French person to not vote for Marine Le Pen. So I think that, because look, historically speaking, at the first round of any elections, including the presidential elections, the French tend to have a vote that is not necessarily the one that they mean. It's more like a knee-jerk reaction, it's a statement to say, hey, we're really not happy. We're going to vote for the extremes to scare you a little bit in the center and make you wake up and make you understand that, if you don't toe the line, this is where we're going to go. So that's what happened in round one. Now, grant you, she's been gaining ground. I mean, fast. I'm not taking anything away from that. But to say that she was robbed is an over exaggeration in my mind. There was definitely a game at foot, and I think it's just so strange for a French center right president in France, and I don't think that has ever happened, to literally go to the furthest corner of the left and say, hey guys, do you want to unite against the other one who's like on my side of the fence? And I'm like, I did not quite understand what Macron was doing, other than, and I think this is the biggest joke. The joke's on us, because we went to the vote, we went to the ballot boxes. Sorry, so we voted. So essentially, we exercise the democratic rights. But because of Macron's manipulation, and I have to give it to him, the dude is small. We got had. I mean, we lost, because now we have no majority. No one knows what the heck they want or they're doing. No one quite understand what was that about or why. We don't have a prime minister. So Macron is still kind of the great pharaoh of our times, and the French have no idea what they do next. And Marine Le Pen has zero power, and so we're like, okay, so what do we do? Are we going to be voting on when the trash is being taken out, or what's up? We don't know. So I would say this: Marine Le Pen was not robbed of anything, but Emmanuel Macron is like, honestly, he's like the Houdini of French politics, and actually pulled the rug from under all of our feet while we were, screaming for democracy and all those beautiful things in the world. And he ain't going nowhere. So he won. That's my takeaway of the French legislative. President Macron won in an election that, get that, he did not even run for. So I think that's brilliant. So well done.
Yeah, that's you got to give it to the man. You got to give it to the man.
I was thinking, because at the end when I saw the result, I was thinking, okay, now you're kidding me, because I was ready. I was thinking, we're gonna see change, whichever, but change is gonna happen. And it was really the question where I have friends in France that were like, we had like one suitcase in case we gotta go. And then and we have the real estate agent on the other side of the table thinking if it goes well, we're gonna buy a new house. And it's insane. And I'm like, so what are you doing? And they're like, we don't know. So we're kind of in between. We don't know what to do. And this is literally what's going on in France. So whatever.
So, so how does like how does your parliament or the equivalent of the parliament or the legislation happen then when you have such a hung
Okay.
parliament? Like how does policy
It
happen then?
doesn't. That's the thing. It doesn't. That's the. This is the
So
beautiful thing. This is what I'm
everything
telling you.
Macron wanted
That's
just
why so
remains.
no. He's because this is the thing. I think he knows the French more than the French know themselves because he knew if you put the far left and the far right and you send the dogs. I mean, they're gonna start like barking everywhere, and everybody's gonna accuse themselves. You're a fascist, or you're the fascist. You're a Nazi. You're this. You're a communist, or whatever. And so they were all arguing, and they tried to build those like various coalition. And at the end of the day, they diluted the message so much and fragmented French society so much that we literally like two clowns holding the same baton, but nobody can move. And like Macron is like sitting in the middle saying, "Guess what? I'm the puppet master, and you guys gonna be dancing to my tune until 2027." So yeah, France. I'm glad to be in the UK. I'm telling you that much because I'm like,
So basically, do you think they might have a re-elections then? Macron might, and this time he might fight.
oh
Say
no.
now you know what happens.
Mm-mm. And that's it. That's it. Like we done. So now I think he wanted to make a point. I think he was in a situation that was very dangerous for him politically, and that he could not. The French were really angry. And as well as I do is that when you have an angry population and you want to do some crowd control, you need to let go of this. You need to let some steam out. And I think that's exactly what happened. Now they're going to have election fatigue. What they're going to do? Go to the ballot box every 2 weeks after they shat on the Israeli for doing so for like a year or two, and having like, oh, we have a new prime minister every 15 days. Um, it's becoming a joke, and also he's going to say like, well, I did it already. You messed up. I let you do it. Kind of helped you, but you did that. I'm good until 2020, 2027. When the new presidential take place, and he's not running anywhere. So who cares? He doesn't care. He's good. He's going to finish his mandate. He's going to tell the French, I told you. You stuck in between. You wanted the far right. I gave you the far left. You're welcome. And now we have people. But this is the craziest part. We have people like Mélenchon, who's honestly like, I mean, this guy just he needs a psychiatrist. I mean, I'm calling anyone who wants to volunteer. Please do. Please call the guy. He's cray cray. I mean, certified. There's another one, Zemmour, who's like I mean, on the scale of I'm crazy and I love it, he's just like he's off the charts. He left Earth. But I'm gonna go with the normal. I mean, normal crazy, but kind of like French crazy, Mélenchon, who had I think something like 90 seats or 80, which is like it doesn't compute. It's like a small little purple dot, in parliament. And the guy is just like, I want to be prime minister. I get the majority. No, no, you didn't. It's just people are literally have lost their marbles. He thinks now that he won because Marine Le Pen did not win. So he understands someone else is not winning as his win. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work this way. There's something called math. There are numbers. And unfortunately for him, the left hasn't invented a way to kind of redraw numbers and reorganize them in an order that fits their reality. But I'm sure that will come. Maybe he will tell you that he identifies as 377 and not 80. And so therefore we need to live in that reality. I have no idea. Maybe.
It's insane. The
Yeah.
French result is so fun. Like, okay, I understood the British results. I could
Did
understand.
you?
I could make.
I didn't.
I mean,
You didn't.
I think the Tories their vote got
They
split
lost.
with Reform,
They lost, for
and
sure.
they suffered. I mean, listen, 14 years is a long time in politics for a
Oh
political
no, no,
outfit.
no. I think like yeah. I mean, look, it happened. But yeah, I think it was time for like renewal, fresh blood. Labour. I mean, Labour won fair and square. To be fair, so
Yeah, they won fair and square. I understand the voting percentage was down. I understand the problems with the organization, the Muslim vote. and I understand all those issues, and I'm very alert to that. I'm aware of the rising anti-Semitism in the West. I've covered it a
It's,
lot on the podcast. It
do
is very
you know
scary.
what worries me, Kushal, is that it's not just anti-Semitism. There's been, because I've been monitoring what's happening in the Hindu community too. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah,
It's
it
because
is.
it's almost like, do you know how we used to kind of, people did not draw parallels, because anti-Semitism kind of existed in its own bubble for a very long time. But because it's coming, there's a lot of, Islamofascism. Unfortunately, the usual culprit are not targeting the usual demographics, and it has somewhat expanded. And I think because the government has been unable to stop anti-Semitism, they feel now so brazen to extend the hatred to other communities. And my issue is this: is that anti-Semitism is so well talked about in that it's been, I mean, it's old, fortunately, and so there's an awareness that is there. Now, I've spoken to a few friends of mine, who are not necessarily like well versed in politics, but they're not stupid people, and they are, they move in society and they have their own businesses, or whatever. I mean, they're smart people, and they're not aware that it exists, and that scares me, because I'm thinking, okay, if people who are quite, um, you know, well to do and far from being stupid and well educated are not aware, because they don't work in politics, that Hindu hate is a thing that is rising in the UK. That tells me that the Hindu community is actually more at risk than I thought, because there's a lack of understanding from the public that there's a need to defend and protect. And that scares me, because you don't have, like we do in the Jewish community, the wealth of experience. And trust me, it's not fun. But
Yeah.
then we have certain mechanism and reflexes, and things that, we were born with it, so we know what to do. And this is not to say that you don't know what to do, but I don't want you to have to learn what to do. That's what I'm trying to say, because it scares me. I don't want anyone, when I see, like, what my daughter had to go through and the things I had to go through when I was a kid. I don't want anyone to go through it. It sucks. It's really, it's not fun. It teaches you to be so prudent with people, and to be a bit on the defense, and to not welcome people as easily as you should. And I really don't want this for the Hindu community in the UK, because I think it would be a loss for the UK if they were to decide to leave, because right now you have an exodus of Jews from Europe. The chief rabbi of France literally told us to just get the heck out. I mean, that was literally his word: get the heck out. It's not safe for you anymore. This is the conversation that has been, I mean, just literally 10 minutes before I was talking to you, I was talking to a really good friend of mine, and we were kind of thinking, okay, so what do we do? Do we go? Do we stay? Should we just bug out and just, like, call it a day, because enough. um and if we do go, it's going to be an intellectual exodus. It's going to be, I mean, Britain and Europe will bleed out good people, money, brains. Imagine if you add to this, the loss of the Hindu community. I mean, like, you're going to have in Britain, what, like 2 buildings? What would be left of Britain's multiculturalism, or France, or any other country in Europe or the West, for that matter? And that really terrifies me, because I'm thinking, all those years of crafting and working, and putting your kids through schools and making sacrifices for your family, to see them grow and to see them get great education, and to suddenly, to see your sons and daughters become doctors and surgeons, and head of companies, and MPs, and all those wonderful things. So what now? What now? Just because you have a bunch of fascists that decided to scream, like, death to everybody, to everything and everybody? I don't know. It's just, it doesn't sit right with me. And again, it's not being talked about. You have to look, you have to really Google it to see it. And even I suspect that, because there's no strong kind of lobby or voice, in the UK, that probably half of the crimes, are going undetected. And also because people may feel that they don't have the courage or the structure around them to speak up. that they would cause more trouble for themselves, that they don't even talk about it. And that worries me, because I do not want young men and women to go unspoken, and for them to feel that there's anything wrong with them because they don't abide by certain rules and they are slightly different. Because that kind of difference, I want it for the UK, I want it for Europe. It's a beautiful type of difference, and we need more of these, please. Thank you.
So, do you think with this far left coalition coming into so-called power in France, and you have no prime minister, given that that is the assumption, do you think Islamofascism will get a new lease of life in France?
Okay, who's going to stop them? Who's going to stop them? I mean, look, already, even though the left in France claimed to have won those legislatives, there was a riot in Place de la République where the French flag was burned. They defaced statues. I mean, they've burned things because they can. People are every day. I mean, it's every day. There is not a day that I open Twitter or whatever and I see, men decapitated, women raped, this, little girl kidnapped, this, that. And I'm thinking, are you for real right now? Are you for real? And unfortunately, and I wish I could tell you any different. It's always from the same demographic. And it's not because they're bad people or because, people coming out of, the Middle East or whatever. It has nothing to do with region. It has to do with an ideology that is brainwashing people into believing that, there's this great crusade to be fought against the West. And what people don't understand also, and I'm going back for 2 seconds on anti-Semitism, is that anti-Semitism is a criticism of the Jews. The West was built on the Judeo-Christian tradition. So there's the Jew in there. So everything that the West stands for, Christianity stands for, has been built on the foundation of Judaism. This is not to say that Judaism is better. That's the way it works. Judaism came first, then Christianity. It's a continuation that doesn't actually negate. So, Judaism is not negated by Christianity, and I don't think that Christians feel that Judaism was negated by the existence. It's a continuation. It's a beautiful, I would say, spiritual journey. That's how I look at it. And people identify, differently. That's fine. And so there's a danger here that they don't see, is that in the mind and the mouth and the spirit of Islamofascists, by targeting the Jews first, it's a way in to better come to hating sacrifices and calling for the death of the Christian world, the Western world, because anti-Semitism is old, it comes easy and naturally to people, and usually doesn't raise suspicion. And so it's very easy to hide in the details, and the devil is in the details, that actually it has nothing to do with the Jews. They're just a convenient conduit for the hate. That the end game is and always was the death of the West. And I would like to remind everyone that the slogan of the Islamic Republic of Iran is death to America, death to Israel, in that order. Order matters. So they didn't say, oh, let's kill Israel and then we'll clean up. No, death to America. As it happens, in order to do that, they first need to try to kill Israel. Not going to happen. But that is the intent. And you see this translated in the streets of France. And until people learn to call a spade and to decide to call that evil, that is the Islamic Republic of Iran, an Islamo-fascist state, then it's to be proscribed by starting with the RSGC. How the heck do you want to protect anybody? How? And now you have children that are being bashed in the head coming out of schools. And those kids can be Muslim, Christian. It doesn't matter, because as far as Islamofascists are concerned, anyone is fair game. That does not absolutely abide by their views. If you don't have your headscarf in the right way, if your name is spelled, in the way that is not according to Sharia, whatever it is that they follow, it's ridiculous. And good people are dying. Good people from the Muslim community, Hindu community, Christian community, Jewish community, whatever community. The point is people are dying. And for some reason, people are arguing, but, there's always an excuse because those poor people coming out of wherever, had a very terrible life. Where people have terrible life, they don't go around raping and beheading people because, they had a terrible life. Like there's something called self-restraint. But apparently they can't exercise it, and the left find excuses. I'm kind of through with those excuses. Doesn't work.
All right, I have a couple of questions from the viewers. So somebody has asked, was there any evidence of foreign interference or big tech interference in the French elections? Was there any? about that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna be look. I'd love to tell you that we've done some research in it. I haven't because I've been busy with my think tank to look into foreign interferences in America and in the UK. So I didn't look. But what I'm gonna say is this: Marine Le Pen has been accused to be, and that is not me laying blame. I'm just saying what was said in the press. That she has been paid by the Russian lobby. Don't know if it's true. The same can be said about many people in France. We know that some politicians in France have been bought by Qatar. Have fun. That they receive also funds from people quite close to Hamas, or they put pictures with people close to Hamas. So you could draw conclusions or not. But look, my assumption would be like most likely, because where you have big interest, there is big money. Whenever there's big money and an elections is in the horizon, of course they're going to try to influence and defend their best interest. So I'm going to say safely for sure there were, from where and whom I don't know.
Fair enough. Next question is, it's about when we were talking about immigration. Someone has asked, what values should immigrants have to be liked when they move in a society? Well, that depends on what society they're moving in, right?
Do you know what? I don't think it's a question of being liked, because you can't be liked by everybody. And this notion that in order to exist and to be valued, it needs to be reflected through the eyes of others, I think is delusional. I'm going to say respect yourself, be a good man. I mean, look, you and I live on
Follow the
different.
law.
Yeah, and look, you and I, became friends. We come from very different backgrounds. I was raised in one place, you were raised in another. I don't think that we needed like someone to translate in terms of what do I think is makes a good man, you, and what you consider like would make a good friend, me. I'm just gonna jump to conclusion. Um, I mean, just don't kill. Um, love animals, because I have cats. I mean, like, be a good person, just be kind and compassionate, but not naive, and not don't be compassionate out of cowardice. Just be compassionate for real when it's necessary and just and fair. Be fair. See people for what they are as opposed to what they look like or the color of their skin or hair, because you could change it. So like it means nothing. Also, it's completely irrelevant. Do that. Educate yourself. Be respectful of other people's belief without giving up your own. That's the thing. You don't have to give up your belief. Just if you believe to behead people for fun on a Sunday morning, I'd say don't move. Stay where you are. Don't immigrate. Um, but that's it. But don't try to be liked. No, like this is childish things. Like I'm not liked and I'm still breathing. There you go. It works.
Yeah, I always, when I go to any country, like I'm in a unique position where I'm living in India and Canada both, so I kind of understand the immigrant mentality, while I also know the mentality of the native, because I'm a
Yeah.
native in one country and an immigrant in another country. So it's a very unique perspective, and it has taken me a while to understand the immigrant's perspective and the native person's perspective. And to be honest, I've learned to respect people in Canada, and when they have concerns about immigration, I've actually learned to respect that, because I have those own concerns when I live in India. And at the same time, I've learned it through living, how racism or many bigoted things can be spewed under the garb of immigration. And now I have realized that the line is actually very clear, that what makes a good immigrant and what makes a good immigration policy is actually not that hard to understand. And it's fine. And I don't know why people find it very offensive when they have these discussions. I think these discussions are very easily solvable, and
I mean,
eventually
look, it should
society
not
should
even
decide.
be. It should not be a matter of like debate. It's just like super easy. Bring me numbers. I'm gonna sort it out real quick. It's not hard. Just invest in infrastructures. Job done. Come in. You're welcome. That's it. Seriously, it's not hard.
Yeah.
The better
And
infrastructures,
once you're there, you
more
follow
people
the
can
law,
come in.
be a good
And
citizen.
obviously not. And also the notion is like if you break the law, you pay the price, go to jail, like everybody else. There's the equality before the law. That is one of the founded principle of any functioning democracy. Once you do that, It's fine. I mean, I don't really care where you come. I mean, people could come from Mars for like a.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting. But just before we go, uh, what is the future of French polity? Like, what is the future of Marine Le Pen? I mean, she's not
Oh,
getting
she will
any
be
young.
president. She will be president for sure. I mean, look, you just need to look at her trajectory, and she lost, but it wasn't. I think she got overly excited by the hype. Thinking as the I can smell it. I can smell like the prime minister's office. And it wasn't for her. It was actually for her number one in the party, Jordan Bardella, and he lost. But he's a 26-year-old kid. I mean, like, it's okay. He will make it through. I guess if she's good enough, if she answers the questions that the French people are asking, she will be elected. The French system is a very complicated one to kind of derail, because one vote, one person, especially for the presidential, job done. Like, it's hard. It's really hard to kind of mess that one up. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It's not like the US elections, where you could have all kinds of shenanigans happening. This is a bit
Hmm.
harder. Um, and we'll see. But look, I think we also need to move away from party politics and this notion that of right and left, because, like I told you, it has been rewritten so much, since 30 years ago, that the far right has become the center and the center right has become the left. I mean, it's really weird. There's been a really weird tilt. So I think we need to maybe, what about we try to kind of rebrand it differently and say, this is the party that aligns the closest to my views. Because, see, I have this thing where I'm kind of, when it comes to the economy and defense, I'm quite conservative, but I would tilt towards the left when it comes to, to what's happening within the country, in terms of, we should lead through compassion, not stupidity. But I'd like to think that, being too harsh on people, I don't think is working. To enable them to do nothing is not helpful either. You need to have some kind of a fair middle, and I do believe that we have a responsibility to those who cannot. That I believe
Fair enough.
100%. We have to. We also need to be focusing on education our young people, to invest in them because of the future. So it's kind of like a dark moment. Like, well, yeah, I'm a mother, so we comes of that naturally. There's many things I think we should do that are more kind of like labor. But it doesn't mean, but I don't identify with either. It just depends. And so I think I identify more with people, particular politicians. And I think that people need to learn to do that more, rather than just abide by an ideology, because lots of the time actually they get betrayed, because those people are just jumping on that because they want the vote rather than actually represent those values. So it's a bit tricky.
Fair enough. Catherine, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I wish you all the best, and I
Thank
hope the new projects that you're working on um, get fructified. And so, Twitter is the best way to get in touch with you, Catherine. I've
Yeah,
added your Twitter
definitely.
handle.
You could also, I will drop you, well, if anyone wants to get in touch with me, it's Shaq Dempsey on Twitter. Just drop me a direct message. I'll always answer. Might take me a second, but I promise I will. If anyone wants my email, I will drop it on DM on Twitter. If they want to discuss what we're doing at the Forum for Foreign Relations and all the beautiful projects that we're working on. And I'm not going to put my WhatsApp online because otherwise I'm going to get drowned.
Never,
But yeah,
never.
it's always a pleasure, honestly. And my best to your family. I think you're wonderful. You do an amazing job. And love you guys.
All right, guys, we'll wrap today's discussion. Once again, Catherine's Twitter handle is in the description, so go follow her on social media. If you want to know more about her think tank and the work she's involved in, you can go and get in touch with her, and she will be more than happy to share the details. As far as I'm concerned, you know the drill. If you want to support the Charvak podcast, you can become a member on Patreon and YouTube. You can buy the merch on kushalmehra.com, Kadak merch. You can send your donations through UPI. If you can't do any of that, just like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment in the comment section, and if you're an audio listener, leave a rating on your preferred audio platform. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, namaste, take care, bye bye.